Now it is. We've called the meeting to order, and if you're watching by television or on your computer, you'll see a little different scene. We're trying to honor and take a leadership role in keeping the number of 10 or under. And so that's the way the council is going to be structured. The city, other council members are in the conference room, and they're seeing what we're seeing, and they're hearing what we're hearing. And so it's going to be a little different, and there may be some glitches in terms of you being able to hear. I hope not, but be patient with us. We're trying to do the best we can under these circumstances. But the business of the city goes on. We've got essential services we've got to continue to provide and perform. And so we're trying to keep doing our business as well as use our energy to continue to make sure that our people in Corpus Christi and Nueces County are safe and healthy. And so we hope you'll join us, and we'll get through this. It's a relatively short agenda, so we'll try to get this done, but we just can't not keep our city moving, and we have to have these opportunities to come together and act as the elected body. So we want to thank you, and we'll start with an invocation, and I'll do that. We're not asking ministers from around the community to come in and do that during this period of time, and I'll be giving the invocation. And speaking of invocation, I would like to ask the community that maybe tomorrow at around 4 o'clock, by that time you want to take a little break, is that I'd ask for the community to come together at 4 o'clock and just say a prayer on behalf of our staff, our first responders, our hospital personnel, the doctors and the nurses that are working with us in this effort to keep them safe and keep them from harm, and also to pray for our state leaders and our national leaders and international leaders. They're all working on the same objective, and that's to try to keep their people safe and healthy. So at 4 o'clock tomorrow, we'll call that a day of prayer in Corpus Christi, and I'd ask you to join me wherever you are. If you're driving, don't close your eyes to pray. Pray with your eyes open. But if you're at home or wherever you may be, just take a few moments and offer a prayer for our country and our world and for us here in Nueces, Corpus Christi, because we're trying to do the best we can with the information we have, because our safety and our health of our people is our number one objective. So join me as we give the invocation to start this meeting, and then we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance and as we do normally, and then we'll get right into the business of City Council. Our Father, we're thankful that you've given us this day, and we pray, Father, that the opportunities we have to do good for our community, you would guide us and direct us in the decisions we make, and we pray that you would continue to watch over our first responders, our medical doctors and nurses and personnel that are working on this and trying to ease the pain and the concern and the frustration and the anxiety of our community, that we know that calling on you, you will provide that peace and understanding, and that we're going to get through this, and we thank you for that. And we just pray for your guidance in all of our decisions, and these things we ask in your name. Amen. Join me in the pledge. Oh, let's see. Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, thank you. Ms. Huerta, and we have the other council in the executive conference room, and they're on speaker, and so if their mics are on now, we're going to call the roll. Ms. Huerta?
Mayor Joe McComb.
Here.
Council members Roland Barrera.
Here.
Rudy Garza.
Here.
Paulette Oaxaca.
Present.
Gil Hernandez.
Here.
Michael Hunter.
Here.
Ben Molina.
Present.
Everett Roy.
Present.
Greg Smith.
Here.
City Manager Peter Zanoni.
Here.
City Attorney Miles Risley. Mayor and Council, a quorum of the council and the required charter officers are present to conduct the meeting.
All right. Another procedural thing, when we begin to go through the agenda, when we get to items up here at the council table, I have numbers where council members, if they want to make a comment or statement, little panel lights up so I know who it is that would like to speak. In the executive conference room, they don't have that, so the procedure today is that when we have opportunities for comment, I'm going to ask for people in the executive conference room if they have any comments, any council members. Well, I'm going to ask them first so that I don't overlook anybody, and then we'll go to the council members around the table. So let's do that. But starting, we've called the roll. Ms. Huerta, the public has an opportunity to submit comments if they want to
Yes, sir.
through written form. Do you have any public comments that you'd like to enter into the record?
We do. For those are at the council's place. For your reference, we will be attaching those to the minutes for the record.
All right. So for those of you that sent in your public comments, we've all been provided copies of that. So we'll have your comments and they will be in the record. And one of these days we'll get back to our normal routine. We appreciate your interest and submission of those. All right, then no other public comments that what you've
Right.
received and we have in front of us. All right, at this point, there's a motion, we've got some, no, the minutes,
Well, actually, the minutes are, we're withdrawing those. We're going to be presenting those next week. So the
All right.
minutes of March 17th will be presented next week.
all right. On item, well, wait a minute here, I
Well,
missed the
city manager
city
Zanoni has
manager's
a
report.
report.
Oh, that
Yes.
was an important one. Sorry, I missed that, Mr. Manager. Mr. Zanoni, you have
Okay.
the city manager's report?
Yes, sir. Mayor and members of the council and the community, this morning, we're going to, again, dedicate my report to an update on the COVID-19 situation, and we're going to have Annette Rodriguez, our health director, begin with an update from her standpoint, and then I'll provide some additional remarks after she presents.
All right.
Thank you so much. So COVID-19, to just go back a little bit, so for the worldwide cases, we have greater than 395,647 cases to date and greater than 17,241 deaths. January 21st, actually, of this year, the United States actually had its first case. So 2 months later, March 24th, we have 46,485 cases in the United States. So March 4th, we actually had our first death in the United States, and 20 days later, we have 591 deaths. In Texas, we have 352 cases, and so far, we have 8 deaths. So as you can imagine, with the press and with everything that's been going on here locally in Nueces County, we continue to see an influx in phone calls that are being made to the health district. We have added, as we mentioned, the 5th call center. And so we have approximately 45 phone takers, if you will, that are answering phones 24/7, trying to answer questions for the community. The calls are taking longer now because we have people that we're contacting as a result of the cases that we've had. We're contacting them, so if they don't answer the phone, they're calling us back, and they have a lot of questions like anybody would. So some of those calls are taking a lot longer than just a few minutes. We are also making calls to restaurants. We've had some complaints about social distancing, and so our environmental staff actually do a lot of the permitting for the restaurants, and so they've reached out to the restaurants locally just to make sure they understand the CDC guidance that was given, the declarations that were given, and also to ask them if they have any concerns that we can help them with the social distancing for the drive-thrus or for the carryouts. We have set up and organized at the health district an indoor warehouse for public health items that are needed, not only for our drive-thrus, but for other events, for healthcare worker assistant. We've organized and inventoried our N95 mask, our goggles, our gowns, our gloves, our go kits, our portable lights, our cones, our safety vests, our body bags, our toe tags, etc. Now we can go upstairs and very efficiently and easily get what we need to help the community. Our BSL-3, our Biological Safety Laboratory, was certified yesterday, and our staff all passed their proficiency testing. Our microbiologists all passed the CDC proficiency testing. So we were able to start running the COVID-19 testing yesterday out of the local health department. So we're very excited about that. We had been telling the community the week of March 23rd, and we were on target. We did hold a drive-through yesterday at the Old Memorial Hospital parking lot. We scheduled 18 patients to go through. 17 came through, 1 was a no-show. We had an additional 3 inpatient specimens that were collected, and we ran the test through the Health District Laboratory. We resulted 6 positive from the 20 that we ran. 1 individual was not a resident of Corpus Christi, so we will not count that as part of the positive cases for Nueces County. We are scheduled to have another drive-through this Thursday, depending on the number of PUIs, which is persons under investigation, that we have. Many of the hospitals and doctors' offices are now sending specimens to the commercial labs, since the commercial labs have now come online. Some of the commercial labs do not require any criteria for testing, so they can just run those tests as they need to if they feel like it's a clinical judgment that they think that they have coronavirus. We were just informed maybe an hour and a half ago that one of the local doctor's offices called us and said that they had a positive coronavirus case, that it came through a commercial lab, and we will be contacting the patient to start the contact tracing for those individuals. We did reach out to all of the positives yesterday to start the contact tracing, which means we start talking to them and asking them, you're positive, so who did you come in contact with? Oh, okay, so your wife, your children. We take all their information, see if anybody's symptomatic. Then we also ask them about work. So where do you work? Who have you come in contact with? When did you start feeling ill? And we try to go backwards, and we try to ask them to look at like their credit cards statements so they can remember if they went to a restaurant. And we're getting all that information. So it is time consuming, but we're going as fast as we can so we can reach out to the contacts as well. If there's a contact to a positive case, they must be quarantined for 14 days. If they have symptoms, they are to reach out to the health district so we can help kind of direct them on where we need to go from there. The number of cases now for Nueces County is 7. So the original index case that we had, the 5 from yesterday, and the 1 from the commercial lab earlier today. Our laboratory, the Laboratory Response Network, is a laboratory for the entire area that includes San Patricio, Nueces, Aransas, Jim Wells, Clayburgh, Victoria, B County, Calhoun, Goliad, Live Oak, and Refugio. So any of those places that need to have a test run, those tests get run through us. So I'm available if y'all have any questions.
Well, we appreciate it, and, we want the public to know that we're working and the work that you're doing, and we appreciate that very much. Anyone in the cloud over there? I'm not referring to it as a cloud. It's easier than executive conference room. Anybody in the cloud, council members in the cloud, have any comments?
No, sir.
All right. Anybody on the council? Well, we appreciate your work. We don't want to keep you here any longer than you have to be, so one, to get out of the room, and one, to go back to work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, thank
Stay
you,
safe
Annette.
and healthy. All right, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Annette. We want to, I've thanked Annette many times, but it's worth thanking again. So Annette Rodriguez, our health, our health director, and Dr. Dante Gonzalez, our assistant director, we need to thank them for the tremendous amount of hours and professionalism and care and empathy that they've exhibited over these past several months, really. I also want to point out our 6 persons in our lab that Annette talked about. So we have 4 microbiologists. Those are the ones that actually put some pretty heavy suits on and actually do the testing. Our lead microbiologist is Valerie Renquez. We have 3 microbiologists, Rachel Rios, Raymond Martinez, Angela Flores. So that's our team of 4 microbiologists that work for the city and county health district. Also 2 lab techs that help them with paperwork and other things, Lauren Langley and Jolyn Gonzalez. So that team is impressive, and they basically put their lives at stake every day testing those viruses and other things through the year. So we want to thank them. Annette mentioned it, but we have 7 confirmed cases now in Nueces County. one from Saturday, 5 from yesterday, and another one positive from today. And we are getting this information out as soon as it's available to get out. There's a lot of information we have to confirm, so while we may know there's a positive test result, we have to do things like confirm where it came from and make sure our facts are correct. So we're getting information out as soon as we can to the community. I don't want anyone to think that we're holding back information or not telling. There's been a lot of rumors to that end, so we're doing our best, and as quick as we can. We have to, though, make sure that our facts are accurate before we release them. Let me just give you a few other updates, or actually this is not an update, it's something we've been telling the community and it bears repeating. How can we prevent COVID-19, and what can we do, each of us on our own part, to help curb the growth of this in our community? And so one of the key things is, if you feel sick, stay at home. You know, if you feel whether or not you're coming down with a slight cold, or maybe you might have something worse, stay at home and don't mix with other people. Reduce travel outside of your home and of the city. And so the 5 cases yesterday that were reported, every one of those persons traveled outside of our city to hotspot areas where there's a lot of people with coronavirus. So try to minimize travel outside of our city limits. Practice social distancing, just like the council's doing today. Stay 6 feet away from others when you're mixing with people. Don't form groups of any more than 10 persons, right? Don't get in big groups, no more than 10. Wash your hands with warm soap and water frequently through the day, not just once or twice, but as many times really as you can. And keep those hands under that water and soap for about 20 seconds or longer. If you don't have access to that, use those hand sanitizers. They're not as effective, but they work. And so use those as well in between the soap and water if that's what it takes. And then the only way you can get the virus is by letting it into your body. And one way that can happen is if you touch your eyes, your nose, or your mouth with unwashed hands. So try to keep your hands off your face. It's tough to do, but if we think about it more often, I think we can do it. So those are some of the preventative tips that we've talked about, and we need to continue to stress to the community. Let me just remind us of some of the facility closures. These closures that I'm going to talk about are effective through April 3rd. That's the order that we issued. So all of our 6 library locations are closed, our park and recreation community centers, our Collier Pool and Natatorium, the Oso Bay Preserve and Learning Center, Corpus Christi and Ben Garza gyms are closed. Our El Cruz Tennis Center is closed. All of our senior centers, 8 of them are closed, but we're still providing meals through a drive-through at the curb, Monday through Friday, 11:30 to 12:30. The municipal courtrooms have been closed for several weeks now. Magistration is done via teleconferencing. I know Councilwoman Guajardo and Councilman Garza have expressed interest in closing the pay station areas, and we're going to make that decision soon, today or tomorrow. There's very little foot traffic in there, somebody paying a traffic fine. So we'll assess, and I'm working with Gilbert to determine that, so more information on that is coming. On our bayfront, starting with the Lexington is closed, the Texas State Aquarium is closed, the Art Museum, the Museum of Science and History, and the Art Center further along the bay, all those are closed. Our city parks are open, and our bay and Gulf beaches continue to remain open, but we do need to stress to the community, we need them to help do their part and not congregate in big groups. And that includes in the back of a pickup truck or any other means. So if we can keep the groups to 10 or less, and we can keep a good distance between the family groupings that are there, we may be able to keep those beaches open. But what we're seeing in some cases over the weekends, bigger groups, younger crowds maybe not adhering to those guidelines. So we really need to tell everybody, do your part. And if you see somebody out there in a bigger group, go and tell them, or get a police officer to tell them. But we know that those beaches are important to our community. It's kind of the lifeblood of here, but we have to do our part if we want to keep everybody safe. And so let me transition to some public safety operations. I know the police department has done a great job in using social media. The police chief did a video or 2 to the community, but let me just let the community know about some changes in our police operations. So our public safety does remain a priority, and public safety remains a #1 priority. And following recommendations from the Center for Disease Control, Precautionary measures are being taken by our police force to keep them and basically the community safe as well. So to reduce contact in the field, calls that are a report in nature, where you're just taking a report, they are going to be done through a telephone reporting unit instead of sending a live officer out there at the scene or at the house. And so a citizen will speak to an officer, and the officer will write the report via telephone on an incident. Walk-in service at the main police substation downtown has been discontinued until further notice. The Criminal Investigation Division will not be open to the public. Those detectives will continue to investigate and file cases, but they'll be using phone interviews as much as possible. And so we have to remember that the police officers on a daily basis, we want them to see as many people as they can, right? The concept of community policing, but they're at risk, and so the less interaction they have, the better. So in those cases where they cannot interact and do things over the telephone, that's basically what they're doing. We know the police department is great in community engagement, and so unfortunately though, all their community events and programs that normally would be taking place, those have been postponed until further notice. And our police athletic league that helps tremendously, they're postponing all their programming as well. On the other side of public safety, our fire department, there are no changes to fire operations. We've heard Chief Rocha tell us that numerous times. All our fire stations and our EMS medics are in full operation, so that's good for the community. Just let me talk a little bit about the EOC. So the city has an emergency operations center, and we usually open that during inclement weather events like a hurricane or some flooding, but in a disastrous situation like this, that center has been open at a different readiness level. With the governor's declaration last week, we placed our EOC center on full-scale activity, meaning level 1. So that means it's in complete operation. The goal is to get materials and equipment and supplies, and so the EOC center helps in doing that. They work with the statewide network and national network to get us supplies. So a group that includes the mayor, myself, the county judge, and others conference or meet every day at 8 o'clock as part of that EOC center operation. That is led by a seasoned and well-experienced Assistant Chief Billy Delgado, who's doing a great job in that end. And then let me just highlight a couple of things. We know we have a great community, and it's one of the reasons I'm so glad I came here, because the community is really phenomenal. And these are just some examples of some of the extraordinary commitment that the community has made. They've stepped up and either have donated material or time. That includes Bechtel Engineering. They recently donated over 1,000 of the most protective face masks, the N95s they call them. They gave those to our police officers and firefighters, so over 1,000 masks from Bechtel. Our playgrounds are areas where there's a lot of activity, and the pressure washing group called Nash Pressure Washing, owned by Robbie Nash, and they're under their own kindness of going out and pressure washing our park playground equipment and other things that people use often. They began yesterday pressure washing at Sun Valley Park. And his goal, Mr. Nash's goal, is to try to get one park a day across the city just to give it a good wash down, and we're thankful for that. We know Victor Betancourt from VFit Productions early on stepped up and got paper products and cleaning products and hygiene products for our most vulnerable seniors. He's collected over 900 kits of materials that they've bundled up. He has a good entourage of private sector persons, to include Dr. Croker, Vance, dentist, and then Byron Butler, Butler Reynolds. South Texas Lighthouse for the Blind stepped up and provided a big amount of toilet tissue, and HEB came to the plate first off, so we want to be real thankful to those folks. Victor continues to stay in constant contact with me and staff, and we're giving those materials out to our seniors when we do the home delivery meals. We're thankful for him. Lamar Advertising, we have 2 big advertisement billboard companies in the city, and Lamar last week called us and said, we want to give you 13 digital billboards free of space to advertise coronavirus awareness messaging. And so we're about finished internally here developing that messaging. And soon you'll see across the city message points just to remind people some of the preventative measures we can do. So thank you to the community, both private sector persons and then the corporations that have helped us. We're really appreciative of that. And let me just close out, Mayor, by reminding our community of some of the ways they can communicate with us and get information. So our website at www.cctexas.com, cctexas.com, has a link on there for the coronavirus material that we have been assembling and updating daily. There's links to the CDC website. We have interactive maps, information that they can read to better inform themselves on what is the virus. And then if they feel like they're sick and they need help, remember you have to call the health district first if you're not going to a private lab. Our number is 826-7200, 826-7200. That's the number you should call if you need assistance in terms of testing or questions on do I have the virus or not. And then for non-health related issues, if you want to call the city to see what may be open or closed, or if there's an issue with a pothole, say, or missed trash pickup, our number's still the same as 826-CITY, so 826-2489 is our general information number that people can call for information. So, Mayor, that's it. We appreciate the council's commitment to helping the community, and the staff's working hard to keep our community safe and save lives through this effort. I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Anyone in the cloud have any comments or questions of the city manager?
Any comments?
No comment?
No comments, thank you.
None.
All right, anybody? I don't see any lights lit up here. All right, we don't have any minutes. We got 2 board and committee appointments. I understand, Ms. Huerta, but these are board and commissions that are people that are recommended by the organizations. And as I understand it, on the Corpus Christi Downtown Management District, there's 1 vacancy, and they're recommending Jamie Nardasi Barrera from out at Texas A&M Corpus Christi.
Yeah, it's 1 vacancy filling the category of resident.
All right, and then on the reinvestment zone, they are recommending reinvestment zone number 3, James Sedgwick Jr., is that correct?
Yes, so we could just take them one at a time. The first one is the Corpus Christi Downtown Management District. It's the 1 vacancy, as you stated, for resident. And per the Texas Local Government Code, succeeding directors are chosen through the recommendation of the board and the approval of the council. So it is Jamie Barrera, Nodarse Barrera, who's being recommended.
Move
Is
to
there a motion?
approve.
Okay.
All right, there's a motion and a second for the appointment of Jamie Nardasi Barrera to the Downtown Management District. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right,
Then we
That
have
passed.
the reinvestment
Any-
zone number 3. I'm sorry.
and then there wasn't any opposed, no opposition. On the reinvestment zone, Mr. James Sedgwick Jr.,
Yes, 1 vacancy representing Downtown Management District.
and there's a motion.
Is there a second?
All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Who seconded?
I second it. Or Paulette seconded.
Okay, thank you, Paula.
Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, that takes care of our board and commission appointments.
Yes, that's right.
On our consent agenda, that's items 3 through 16. 3 through 16. Most, if not all of these, well, there may be some new ones, but I think most of them were last time, right?
Mayor, did we need to make some corrections or modifications to the gathering numbers? I don't know if we made some changes from last week to this week. I don't,
For
Where-
3, no.
on number 3.
I'll let our city attorney address that.
All right, let's, all right, we're gonna pull number 3 on consent agenda. Anyone else, anybody in the cloud having item 3 through 16 they wanna pull?
You don't need to pull anything? No, sir.
All right, anybody here? I don't see a number anywhere. All right, then, entertain a motion for approval of consent agenda items 3 through 16,
4.
excluding number 3.
Right.
But there's a motion and a second for consent agenda items
Who
4.
seconded? Thank you, Paulette.
She's our permanent second down there.
Yeah, as long as we can hear.
All right, there's a motion and a second on approval of consent agenda items 4 through 16. Was there any Did you receive any comment from the public that wanted to address any of those?
No, sir.
No, okay. No public comment was requested on that, on those items, on these items. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, all opposed? Okay, on item 3, Mr. Isley, you want to tell us what that change is?
Mayor and members of City Council. Item number 3 is an ordinance approving and extending the second amended order regarding public and private gatherings ordered by the mayor on March 18th, 2020, providing for penalties and declaring an emergency. And that's a very good question about the gathering numbers. We have 2 live orders out there. We have the order of the governor and the second amended order regarding public and private gatherings. Both are valid. And let me explain the differences. The second amended order, the one issued by the mayor, prohibits gatherings of more than 50 persons anywhere in the city. And that's 50 persons regardless of what the nature of the gathering is, unless it falls into one of the exceptions. The exceptions to mass gatherings are people in multiple separate enclosed spaces of a single building, or use of an enclosed space where not all 50 are there at the same time, schools, spaces where people of 50 or more may be in transit or waiting for transit at bus stops, office space, hotels and residential buildings, grocery stores, shopping malls, outdoor markets, restaurants, other retail establishments, hospitals, medical facilities, shelters, jails, detention centers, and the airport. There is, in addition, a recommendation that people avoid gatherings in excess of 50, and in high-risk populations, avoid gatherings of 10 persons or more. Now, this 50-person gathering limit has been superseded by the governor's order. Not eliminated, because it does cover some gatherings that would not be included within the governor's order. And let me explain the governor's order. The governor's order, which was issued one day after the mayor's last order, the second amended order, the governor's order says that every person in Texas shall avoid social gatherings in groups of more than 10 people. And people shall also avoid eating or drinking at bars, restaurants, and food courts, or visiting gyms or massage parlors, but encourages the use of drive-through pickup or delivery options. And also, people shall not visit nursing homes or retirement or long care facilities, and schools shall temporarily close. It goes on to say, this executive order does not prohibit people from visiting grocery stores, gas stations, parks, and banks, as long as the necessary precautions are maintained to reduce transmission. It does not mandate sheltering in place. All critical infrastructure will remain operational. Domestic travel will remain unrestricted, and government entities and businesses will continue providing essential services. For offices and workplaces that remain open, employees should practice good hygiene and, where feasible, work from home to achieve optimum isolation from COVID-19. Now, the difference between the 50-person limit and the 10-person limit is that the 10-person mandate in the governor's order only applies to social gatherings. Many other entities are choosing to limit their gatherings that are not social gatherings to 10 persons or less, but that's a voluntary and probably a smart choice. The 50-person limit is mandatory, but goes beyond the social gatherings. So for those reasons, the ordinance is still relevant, and it extends the mayor's second amended order. I'd like to point out the mayor's second amended order, we don't yet have a shelter in place requirement in the county or the city, but many of the counties and cities in Texas are issuing shelter in place provisions.
So we don't have one right now.
Not at this time, unless something came from the county, and I haven't yet been
Yeah,
told.
no, we need to make that real clear. I mean, there may be, but right now that it does not. So anyone have any questions on this? I think this is just trying to get everything current. And these, as I understand it, is there a end date on these, or is this until we take action to end them?
You turn your microphone on, please, Mr. Rizzo.
This has the same 30-day limit that we had put on the last one.
And that would get us to April the 17th?
This goes to April 17th, 2020.
Okay. So right now, it's in effect until April the 17th, and that, depending on the circumstances, could be extended. But anyway, that's what the orders are now. Any comments, anyone in the cloud?
Mayor, I have a question. This is, for the record, this is Councilman Molina. Do we, and this is directed to either Miles or the city manager, are we expecting an order from the county judge anytime soon for shelter in place?
I would hate to say expecting. The possibilities are being discussed at the staff level for additional measures.
Is that something that we can anticipate?
Well, I spoke with the county judge this morning, and she is having the county attorney and herself looking at that possibility, creating a document and getting the language that she's comfortable with, and shared with me that, you know, she would not do anything until once she's satisfied with what she and the county attorney have come up with, then we'll try to get together with her, whether that be this afternoon or tomorrow, to see what she's come up with, and that there'll be a meeting with, in conjunction with Miles, the city manager, and myself, to see that what she's proposing, but that at this time she doesn't have one and ready for that consideration, but could be at least for discussion later today or possibly tomorrow. And I told her we were in council meeting today, so I would anticipate maybe tomorrow we'll get together and look at what she's proposing and the implications of that. But one thing that she is very focused on is that she's wanting to, obviously like all of us, health and safety is first, but at the same time, she's very sensitive to the impact of any order coming from the county judge or from the city on our businesses and the economic impact. And so we want to try to come up with a balance that would allow people to continue to work, but really pull back their social gatherings and activities. But there's not one on the table right now for consideration, in answer to your question. But within the next probably 2 days, we'll have hammered something to where, if we feel like it's a necessity, that could happen, but that's not a promise.
If and when that happens, do we need to circle back and modify our ordinance in any way?
I think ultimately will, but I think at the time that it's ordered under the declarations, the judge and the mayor both have authority to sign it to make it realistic, and then the council, Miles, help me on that, but I think the council then would ratify that.
It's kind of an interesting relationship between the county and the city in the issuing these orders. The county's orders technically prevail if they're not in complete sync. However, the county has much more limited enforcement resources. Therefore, it makes sense for the county and the city to work together closely to make these a match as much as possible.
We're subject to that.
I didn't think he said that.
Any other
Mayor.
comments from the cloud?
Yes.
So Mayor, this is Councilman Roy. I have
Go
I
ahead.
have additional question on this so that I understand the procedure. If the county elects to move to shelter in place, then under that provision, you have the ability, along with the city manager, to concur with that, right? Or make a decision, and that decision is in place for 7 days? Is that correct? And then the city council, do we have to go behind and ratify that?
I'll let Miles address that one.
To the extent the mayor has executed the order, what you ratify is the mayor's execution of that order. You're not technically ratifying what the county does, and that's not required, but you do need to ratify what the mayor does.
Yeah. So if the county judge makes a declaration, then, you know, if we're in concurrence with that, then we would amend our order to reflect the county's order, so that we're all on the same page. Is that correct?
I would recommend that we be in step, because otherwise it's going to be confusing for our police officers who have to enforce these.
So that's why I think the judge is very committed to getting with us tomorrow or this afternoon, depending on what our schedule is, to make sure that it's a unified front in our effort to keep everybody safe and healthy.
Asking for, I guess the big thing I'm asking for is that I think this is an important enough topic that I would like all of council's input, especially if we go to something like sheltering in place.
Okay. Well, we can do that. We'll see what the judge and her attorneys come up with, and then we'll advise you on that, provide copies for you, and get some input through the city secretary's office so we don't violate any Open Meetings Act. But we'll get that to you before I take any action, or we call it a special council meeting if we feel like we need to. Miles, is that fair enough?
Yeah, and if you
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
If anybody wants to see what one of these orders looks like, whether it be one of the council people or somebody watching the meeting, the city of Dallas has done a good, well worked on shelter-in-place ordinance. If we did something like that, it wouldn't look exactly like the city of Dallas, I'm sure, but it's a good detailed pattern that would look like something that most counties are doing. And one of the important ways to look at that order is to look at the exemptions within the order. Just shelter, to say straight shelter in place it could make people appear catastrophic to people, and it's not. There are broad exemptions allowing the operation of essential businesses. People are still able to go shopping. People are still able to walk their dog, go running, as long as they maintain these social distancing requirements. That as long as they adhere to levels of social distancing, they're still able to carry on many of the activities they would have otherwise carried on.
Right. Okay.
Can I just say, Mayor, we'll email that to the council this morning so you can see it, just the Dallas example.
Okay.
We'll email it to the full
Well,
council.
all right. The manager said he'll get a copy of the Dallas ordinance to all the councils so you can see what they've done. But as I said a little earlier today, it's good information we have from what others are doing, but I keep reminding myself we need to be focused on the people that we serve and represent and what's in our best interest of our county and our city. So we'll certainly do that. We don't want to do anything, I guess does it cause no harm, but at the same time, we're focused on safety and health. So the council will be made aware of as much as I'm aware of before any action is taken on behalf of the city. I'll make that commitment to you. Okay, Mr. Hernandez? Excuse me, anybody else from the cloud?
Mayor, just, we're getting some feedback from staff that the council members on the dais, if they can speak more into the microphone, the sound is fading in and out. So if you can just be careful about speaking into it. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, we have a couple of more questions back here.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Greg Smith. If you and the county judge discussed any trigger points for the shelter-in-place order, i.e. we've got 6 confirmed travel-related cases, Are we gonna do shelter in place as is, or as certain amount of cases, community spread? What has been the discussion there? What's gonna trigger a shelter in place order? You mentioned a couple of days logistics, putting it together, and any timeline on when it could actually go in effect, so we could be more, telling our citizens there when to expect something. So what's the trigger for putting a shelter in place? And then what day would it be effective?
Well, it's a good question, and until I see what the judge has come up with, I don't know whether she's got that in her proposal or her draft, but we'll certainly ask about that, and that's something that we need to make sure that if we do it, then it is done with the understanding that people have to have time to prepare and respond. So, you know, she's pretty sharp when it comes to law, and so I anticipate that would be in there as far as the protocol, as to the calling of it and the implementation of it, but we will certainly ask.
Thank you, and it would help us with clarity if we the public had an idea of what the trigger point is now we're communicating that confirmed cases within hours, that would give us all a little bit of warning on that.
Right. No, we understand that, and we're not gonna do anything that is gonna cause, you know, major disruption or concern. So we're gonna be very sensitive to that, and I won't sign anything unless I'm comfortable with how we go into doing it.
Mayor's Roland?
Yeah.
Okay, you know, I've looked at the Dallas County document, and it's very broad, very broad. And, you know, a couple of things, I think we need to bear in mind the anxiety of the community when we say shelter in place. I got a couple of texts last night that said that we're gonna be on lockdown, and I advise that, you know, the information isn't true. And so what happens is that once again, you get the community rushing out to H-E-B and to Walmart and Sam's. And I think we just need to be cognizant of that. And I want to echo Councilman Smith's comments that, you know, it needs to be something that is transparent, and that way there's trigger points. Houston this morning, County Judge Lina Hidalgo issued a mandatory stay home, work safe order. Now I know the verbiage is you know, semantics, but I think we just need to be cognizant that you know, once again, the document in Dallas is shelter in place, and it's very broad. So I'm sure you'll convey that to the county judge.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, and you know, the shelter in place, that's kind of a bureaucratic term. My interpretation is that, you know, it's one of these that, you know, stay home, don't roam kind of projects that we're basically saying we want business to be able to continue to operate, but that, you know, basically it's just your social activities, try to, you know, keep them to a minimum. But we're going to hammer all that out because the judge and I think everybody is sensitive to the negative impact of just a, you know, slam the door thing. And so people should not be concerned and make additional rushes and panic buying, because we're not taking this lightly, but we do want the community to understand how serious, you know, just non-business activities are in terms of trying to control the spread of this stuff. Any other comments?
Mayor, this is Councilman Roy. I had just one other thing to say on this topic.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but all 7 cases so far are travel related. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
At least, we're unsure of the 7th one from this morning, but
Okay.
the 6 prior were all travel related. So 6 of the 7 are confirmed to have been travel outside of the city of Corpus Christi, and we don't know about that 7th one yet.
So I just think it's imperative that we continue the message that talks about travel and making sure that we limit travel, because I think that's probably, at least at this point, the largest area of exposure that we've taken is due to people that are traveling outside of the area and coming back into the area. So I just wanted to bring that back to the forefront, because I think that's something, and when we talk about trigger points, that's definitely something that we can be specific on, and that's traveling outside of the area. So thank you again.
Well, the travel issue, I mean, I think in the strongest terms possible, we need to encourage people not to be traveling outside the area. What we need to also remember is that depends on how your area is and what it is. I mean, you got to have HEB to get their trucks in, you got to have Walmart to get their trucks in, CVS, Walgreens. So ordering an absolute stop to travel is a huge step, and that will not be done quickly, and it will be not be done lightly, because you're dealing with enforcement and entry and exit. But we would ask as strongly as possible for people to exercise great discretion and use. I don't think it's been killed by the virus yet. I think we've still got some common sense in our community to just avoid travel on a voluntary basis to the all extent possible. So
Yes.
we've got, because people live in Corpus Christi, they work over in San Patricio County, they work in San Patricio, they live in San Patricio County, they work in Corpus Christi. So there's cross boundaries all the time where people are living and working. So that decision is not going to be made without a great deal of thought, and because that we're not there yet. So, but as they say, everything is on the table. But I think with public compliance on a voluntary basis, and I think the public will do it. This may be, I mean, when I was a kid, I think I was telling somebody the story that grandfather had his child out at the ranch one day, and wanted to hook up his mule to plow the field, and the mule just wouldn't do anything. The grandfather went over and picked up a 2x4 and hit the mule between the eyes, and the grandson said, "Papa, what are you doing there?" And he said, "Well, I'm trying to get his attention." And I think that's basically what we're trying to do, is get their attention to voluntary compliance, and look out not only for yourself, but for your others. And so, but a travel restriction, in my opinion, at this point, would be an option of last resort, because that would be pretty devastating to the community, because it works both ways, inbound and outbound, and everything you buy in Corpus Christi has gotten here by truck or coming in on ship. So we've got to be very careful of that. But I appreciate that. So don't think we're going to make any knee-jerk decisions on that sort of thing. Anyone else?
I just want to go, Mayor, again, I just want to go on the record. When I'm talking about traveling, I don't want people to panic that we're going to take away their entire traveling privileges to go across the bridge or anything like that. That's not what I was talking about. I was really talking about, I'm still hearing out in the community people that are choosing to go on cruises or go visit people or go to an area for vacation and that. And I just want to encourage people to take it serious. We just heard California, where they had spring break and everybody was out, not using the 6-foot, social distancing, and we're congregating at the beach in large numbers. And I just want us to continue to make sure we get the message out. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else from the cloud?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I want to say, if we do this shelter-in-place order, we need to be very specific as to what can be done and can't be done. I look at our website page where it says go to coronavirus for us in Nueces County, and it doesn't provide a lot of information, so you have a lot of misinformation out there. And what I mean specifically is what can and cannot be done, right? So it should be a one-pager, something easy to look at, line items of items and things that you can go to work, construction, whatever the exemptions are, For example, like construction, if we want to keep restaurant drive-throughs open in a shelter-in-place, you know, we don't want, we already have a lot of pressure on our grocery stores. If we take the restaurants out completely, we're going to put even more pressure on them. You know, these things we want to be very specific in letting people know exactly what it means to be a shelter in place. You know, it just, the more information and the easier we make it for people to understand and access that information would be better for everyone. The last thing you want to have is to have it obfuscated and people not be sure of what they can and cannot do. If we can make it very clear, simple, put it as a list of items on the webpage or to provide to media so they can put it out on the evening news, be very specific as much as we possibly can. There's going to be some gray areas, I understand that, but we need to be very specific so we can communicate that. I don't know how many times I've seen postings of like what the government is not telling you, or that type of stuff. We need to be as much information and as specific as we possibly can in the communication, and that means just, you know, a laundry list on the website, which would be nice to have, which we don't currently have under the existing order. So I think if we can be specific and communicate as best as possible, make sure we have exemptions that are catered to us, not Dallas, but catered to us in our community, and how we travel, how we participate in the community, I think would be the best approach. And if we can communicate that to the county judge, whether in your meeting in the afternoon, about being very specific and providing as much information as possible. Thank you.
We'll do that. Mr. Garza? You're Mr. Roy today on the lights.
Well, I'm sorry. I'll try to be Mr. Garza as much as I can. I was just wondering, I know that typically we allow for public comment during some of the items that we pull up, and we did get some emails and some texts. Are we going to read those out at this particular point?
During the public comment, those were just there for the record, but I mean, it might not be a bad idea.
I just thought that some of these are related to the challenges that we have, and since all of these are related to...
That's fair.
Okay.
Ms. Huerta, you got those public comments that are related to this issue that you might want to read for the record so they know that we've had some public comment? Do you have those, or do you want one of
All
us?
the public, yeah, we received quite a few. You want me to read it?
You got anyone particular you want to read, or just several of them?
I was just hoping that we might be able to just read those out so that the public can hear some of the concerns.
Okay.
All right, would you be kind enough to do that, please, ma'am?
Sure. So
Now, these were public comments made during the public comment period under the provisions we have. We all have them, but so the public knows that we're getting public information, that this is probably a good idea.
Okay, so we received public comment from Thomas Maloney, MD, at 7406 Upriver Road. He states, the subject is COVID-19. As a physician, I strongly urge banning all spring break-related activities without further delay.
All right.
We also received Kate Collins, 3033 Chapel Creek Drive, rural communities. The rural communities suffer from public isolation with typical circumstance. In the height of fear, financial insecurity, and health concern, how will the city respond to our rural communities to ensure they are given equal access to treatment, testing, and then it cuts off. Next, we have public comment, Beth Haddocks. Please issue a stay-at-home order, impose fines on those who disregard it. You can save countless lives this way. I hope you will follow the lead of your fellow mayor in Dallas. Connie Park says, as a citizen of Corpus Christi, I urge you to close all non-essential businesses temporarily. With the recent cases of the virus, it is unsafe and unethical to continue opening retail businesses at a time like this, especially considering the fact that testing the average person is nearly impossible in the city at this moment in time. I called the COVID-19 hotline and was immediately denied testing because I haven't been out of the country starting December of last year. Frankly, this is ridiculous criteria, as there are a number of positive cases in Texas alone and many untested, I'm sure. Until testing is available for everyone showing symptoms, it is reckless and bad leadership to continue non-essential businesses. In the meantime, leadership in the city should be postponing rent, utilities, and mortgage payments until this pandemic That's what it says. Improving the testing screening process and get more people tested. Until then, shut down all non-essential businesses for the health of the average citizen. Do everything you can to ease the financial burden while many are not working. Thank you. It's just an article being forwarded by Anna Towns. Coronavirus could overwhelm the U.S. without urgent action, estimates say, from the New York Times. Ms. Towns also forwarded another article. New York Times, Italy's pandemic, new epicenter has lessons for the world. Please read this and shut down Corpus Christi. Let us be a model for the rest of Texas. Raquel Salas says, I am emailing with grave concern. My daughter-in-law is RN in ER department. Sunday night, a patient was brought in through ambulance as possible coronavirus patient. From my understanding, patient tested negative for flu and was then tested for virus. Patient is in ICU. Nurses that attended to patient were not even in proper protective equipment. They were sent home and asked to return to work next day if no fever. My concern is that the nurses that tended to the patient were not tested. They go back to work until test results on patient come in. In the meantime, they have contact with their spouses and children, and in our case, grandparents. I have contacted local news media. They are investigating but not getting much cooperation from Driscoll Children's Hospital. I am hoping you can give this concern immediate attention. Unacceptable that only 20 tests have been issued to our area. Please help. My concern as a grandparent is for my daughter-in-law, son, and grandson. My daughter-in-law is putting her life in jeopardy for other people's children, and it seems no one is looking out for her well-being. Please do your job. Put people first, economy second. This is very long, so I'll read a few paragraphs of this. It's from Ryan Winterbauer, and this is a funeral home workers during COVID-19 shelter-in-place order. In light of many health departments, state and other local agencies issuing various orders ranging from size restrictions of public gatherings all the way to shelter-in-place orders, the International Cemetery, Cremation, and Funeral Association is requesting that all orders include death care professionals as an essential business. And then he proceeds to define what that is. We request your help in passing on the message regarding the 10-person maximum in public gatherings, including funeral services. Most, if not all, funeral homes now have the ability to stream services to those that cannot attend. We also have the ability to handle the burial or cremation and allow families to gather for a memorial service following this crisis. Conforming to this direction not only protects the immediate family from contracting diseases from visitors, but it also protects our staff who will be interacting with other families. Next we have Sean Spears at 13629 Cactus Circle. How are we expected to shelter in place if we farm land near Tynan, Texas? The planting can't wait, and husband will have to leave every day to go plant until finished with all acres. How will this apply to farming families in these communities? And those are all the comments
Okay,
that I have, sir,
all right,
related to that topic.
all right. Well, those will all be taken into consideration in our discussions with the judge and see where we go on that. I think we're all pretty sensitive to most of those comments. So anything else, Mr. Carter?
Yeah. I do understand council's desire to have a conversation or to debate up here what's essential, what's not essential in the case, or if we come to that point of shelter in place. But I think that in terms of the public good and the public health and an emergency situation, it comes down to the leadership, yourself and our county judge. If you do find the circumstances dictate for you to take the appropriate action to put a shelter in place order in account, we can debate what's essential, what's not essential at a later time. You guys need to do what you have to do when that time comes. Okay? That's the way I feel. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other buttons? Well, I can assure you it will not be done expeditiously as far as just without a lot of thought and some discussion. And we're using, guidance from, I think the Homeland Security has a whole list of what they determine to be essential, and as well as watching out for the health and safety of our community. So we're gonna do the best we can, for our people, and I think you're right, you know, whether it's a Houston ordinance or a Dallas ordinance, they're written for their specific, constituency. We're gonna write ours to address our constituency, but, you know, we wanna look at all ideas and concepts, because I think everybody, when it gets down to it, is focused on doing the best for their community. So we will be mindful of that. Anything else? All right, if not, entertain a motion. That was agenda item number 3 on the.
Yes,
that we
number
make those
3 on
changes. Is that correct?
emergency.
Yeah, so moved. Move to approve.
All right, there's a motion second on item number 3. All in favor?
Seconded, Paulette. Did you second? Just making sure.
She's just real fast.
Yeah.
She did.
I thought I heard her
Thank
say
you,
that.
Ms. Thank you,
All
Ms.
right,
Warren.
all in favor say aye on 3.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, item 3 passes. So 3 through 16 then have passed. We'll go now to, there's a public hearing, item 17. It's a zoning case for an ordinance rezoning property at or near 430 North Padre Island Drive, which is State Highway 358. Who's going to present that? Do you have a staff person who's going to do that, or are you going to do that, Mr. Manager? Who is that? All right, is Mr. Raymond in the back room or in the cloud? Or
Yes, I'm
are
here.
you here?
Can you see me? Right here.
Okay, all right, there you go.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Al Raymond here, Director of Development Services. I've got Andrew Demas here, Senior Planner, to assist here. The case before you is to rezone property located at 430 North Padre Island Drive from RM3 Multifamily District and CG2 General Commercial District to Light Industrial District. The purpose is to allow for future potential industrial use. The applicant is Cliff Investment, Inc., represented by Urban Engineering. Next. Next. Next slide.
We're not seeing the slides, Mr. Raymond.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry. Okay, next.
all right. We're trying to get the slides up for the public, so this is what I'd warned you about a little earlier. Sometimes this is all new to all of us, so let's see if we can't get the slide up on that.
Okay, next page.
All right.
Okay,
There you go.
the property is located along the south side of Bates Road, west of Flato Road, east of North Padre Island Drive. The property primarily fronts on Bates Road and Flato Road. Both are designated as C1 minor arterials. To the north and west are vacant properties zoned light industrial. To the south are vacant properties zoned light industrial and general commercial. To the east, across Flato Road, is West Oso Middle School and West Oso High School, Zone RS6, Single Family 6 District. Additionally, there are several businesses zoned light industrial along Flato Road. The property is 22.41 acres in size, and it is not platted. Subject property consists of vacant land and has been undeveloped since annexation in 1954. Next slide. The proposed rezoning to light industrial is consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan and warrants an amendment to the future land use map. The proposed rezoning is compatible with the surrounding properties and it does not have a negative impact on adjacent properties. Next slide. Planning Commission and staff recommend approval of the light industrial district. And we stand by for any questions.
All right. Is the applicant there with you? No?
No, sir, we don't have the applicant.
He's not back in the room either or available?
No, sir,
All right.
yeah,
But the planning, I see here that the planning commission and the staff both recommend approval. But,
Mayor, I move for approval. This is Roland.
Second.
it's a public hearing, and we just need to open and
oh
close.
yeah, that's good. All right, all right, we'll open the public hearing, and then they say the applicant is not here. The staff and the planning commission recommend approval.
She would know
But
that, right?
evidently there was one in opposition, and I guess they were I don't know, why does it trigger 3/4 favorable if it's just one in opposition?
They see this, right?
I think it's because the 20% rule is in effect. That person must own 20% of the property in that area, in the notification area.
It's
Mhm.
it's based on land area.
Yes.
Okay, based on land area, the adjacent property owner, I'm assuming, doesn't want, and is the adjacent property owner zoned the same as this, or is it different? So the adjacent property owner has light industrial, but he doesn't want this guy to get it.
Mr. Raymond, can you hear?
Yes, I'm sorry, ask again, I'm sorry.
I guess that my question is that the person in opposition, IDV Park PID LP out of Houston is in opposition, but they're the 20% property owner that's adjacent?
Yes, sir, and their opposition, Mayor, is that in 2017, when they wanted to rezone their property, they couldn't zone the property all the way to Flato Road as light industrial. We had them zone part of their property light industrial, the other part CG2 general commercial to transition to the school across the street. So their comment is, well, why isn't this guy going all the way? Why isn't he having to subdivide his lot as well?
Okay. Any comments from the cloud?
Mayor, I move for approval. This is Roland. Or we're still in public hearing, correct?
Well,
Right.
can we just close? So for the record, there are no public
Oh, yeah,
comments
that's right.
received on this item, so we just need to close the public hearing and then proceed
there-
with the motion.
Did you have any written comment?
No, sir, I didn't.
All right, no written comment. All right, well, we'll close the public hearing. And then, Mr. Burdetta made a motion and,
And Mr. Hunter seconded.
Mr. Hunter seconded it. So now there's a motion on the floor, to approve, and we have to have 3/4. That means we have to have
You're
6
good.
favorable. 6 is 3/4.
Yes, well, 7, but we.
7?
Yes. Mhm.
All right, you want to call the roll on this
Yes,
one,
sir.
since there is a percentage requirement? Would you
Yes,
call
sir.
the roll, please?
Mayor McComb?
Aye.
Oh, for passage of ordinance number 17 on its first reading, Mayor McComb.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Barrera,
Aye.
Garza,
Aye.
Guajardo. Aye. Hernandez,
Aye.
Hunter. Molina,
Aye.
and Roy.
Aye.
Okay, the ordinance passes.
All right, that was a unanimous vote, record vote. All right.
Yes, sir.
Item number 18 is, 18 and 19 are ordinances. 18 is the accepting of $25,409.75 for Texas Law Enforcement Officer Standard Education Account for police officer training. Surely nobody's opposed to that.
Move to approve.
Motion approved.
There's a motion to approve item 18. And is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second. Any discussion on item 18? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none, item 18 passes. Item 19, it's a zoning case. Planning Commission recommends denial, and staff recommends approval, and this will require a 3/4 vote. And Mr. Raymond, you're going to present this one?
Mr. Mr. Raymond?
Or who?
Mayor and Council, Al Raymond, again, Director of Development Services. Andrew Demas here to assist. The case before you is to rezone the property located at 2212 Morris Street from RS6 Single Family District 6. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay, the case before you is the rezoning property located at 2212 Marsh Street from RS6 Single Family District to CISP Intensive Commercial District with a special permit. The proposed use was to allow for a homeless shelter. The applicant is the Ed Rochelle Foundation. Next, go to the fourth sheet. Okay, just to bring everyone up to date on where we are with this project, this was taken to the Planning Commission on October 16th, and it was unanimously recommended to deny the rezoning request, which was CISP Commercial Intensive District with a special permit. Planning Commission recommended denial unanimously. Staff recommended approval. Since that time, as you all know, the Good Samaritan Mission on January 10th of this year no longer was pursuing a special permit for Transitional Housing Center. So they pulled out of the project, and the city saw an opportunity to utilize the existing elementary school as an adaptive reuse project to house several city departments as well as operational staff. So the city would like to propose an alternative to this rezoning request for this body's approval, and that alternative is a C1 intensive commercial district, which is consistent with the adjacent property in the surrounding area, and it allows for future flexibility should the city decide to improve on the site. We stand by for any questions.
All right, this is not a public hearing, right?
No, but I do have public comment for this item, so
All right.
one comment received.
All right, well, all right, then we've got a agenda item here. We've heard the staff presentation. The city is the applicant, I guess, or the Rochelle Foundation is the applicant?
The Rochelle Foundation is the applicant.
All right, and we have one comment on this agenda item. Ms. Huerta?
Yes, sir. You ready for that now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Carl Kroll, 8025 Villafrance Drive. Speaking only for myself as a planning commissioner, I voted against the zoning primarily because I believe the underlying zoning is not appropriate for this property, and secondarily due to the concerns of the neighbors. The way special permits work is the special permit shall expire if the allowed use is discontinued for more than 6 consecutive months. If that happens, the property reverts to the underlying granted zoning, in this case CI, commercial intensive. Below is the
Hold on
UDC.
just a second.
We can hear. Okay, thank you. So below, if that happens, the property reverts to the underlying granted zoning, in this case CI commercial intensive. Below is the UDC description of CI zoning. Intensive commercial district. The intensive commercial zoning district is intended to provide for intense commercial service activities as well as a few light manufacturing uses. Such uses may be large in scale and generate substantial traffic, making the intensive commercial zoning district only appropriate along freeways and major arterials. Although the special permit in this case is for a transitional housing facility with conditions, there is no guarantee that this use will continue in perpetuity. If the transitional housing facility closes for 6 months, any use allowed in the CI district can be put on the property. This property is not on a freeway or major arterial, nor are the allowed uses compatible to be in the middle of any residential neighborhood. The CI district allows bars, restaurants, shopping centers, new and used car lots, retail, etc. Basically, just about any use you see along SPID can be put on this property if the CI zoning is allowed. One of the reasons the commission was given the request for CI zoning was that the existing building front and side yard setbacks do not meet other zoning district criteria. This could be solved by leaving the RS6 zoning in place with a special permit and having the zoning board of adjustment grant a variance on the setbacks. I urge you to deny the CI zoning as it is not the highest and best use for the property on Morris Street.
All
And
right,
that concludes the comment.
all right. So, Mr. Raymond, what's your response to that?
I understand his concern because he's exactly correct. If we were to abandon the project, the resulting what's left of the site could be very intensive for the surrounding neighborhood. So We could, in fact, go to CN1. It still allows us to do what we want to do, which is really refurbish the building and create a Class A office use out of it. I have no problem with that.
Can I add to that, though? So we did talk to the applicant, Al. The CI is what they are recommending. We will have, in a matter of weeks, a 40-year lease for it to be office space. So that pretty much guarantees it's not going to flip hands and change into something different than what the intended use is going to be. Just as background, the Ed Rochelle and the city have been working to develop a 20-year lease with a 20-year renewal to turn this abandoned school into a Class A office environment for city and police functions. And so, given that, we would recommend that it stays still at the CI zoning designation, because they'll have 40 years of contractual obligation that it stays in that condition.
Well, I can't speak for the rest of the council, but Rudy and I won't be here in 40 years, so we may let that council deal with it back sometime in the future. Yeah, well, 40 years, well, 120, that wouldn't be too bad.
Hey,
Okay,
Mayor,
any
this is
comments from the
Councilman Roy.
clouds?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I don't recognize the voice, but who is it?
Oh, this is Councilman Roy.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to amend, eliminating the special permit and approving it as a commercial, a CI.
Okay, so that, you need a motion because the recommendation, well, the recommendation is coming, to deny the thing, so we need let's see. District with a special permit, so the recommendation is that Planning Commission recommends denial, staff recommends approval. So let's make sure we're clear on the recommendation. Al, what's the
recommendation?
You're
is
recommending you just go to a CI straight out.
Right. The recommendation is to go to a CI intensive commercial without the use of a special permit.
And Mr. Roy, that's your that's your motion?
Yes, I concur, and I'll second it.
All right, there's a motion then and a second. Was that Roland?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second to uphold the staff recommendation, right?
Right.
So the CI without the special permit, right? Okay.
Right, yeah, CI without a special permit. That's Councilman Roy's motion.
All right,
Staff
and seconded by Mr. Barrera. All right, any discussion, any more, Mr. Hernandez, wait, hold on. Any more in the cloud have a comment?
Mr.
All right,
Hunter
Mr.
said no.
Hernandez?
Okay, help me understand this. And I'm curious as to why we're doing commercial intensive versus neighborhood commercial. Can you be specific as to why that's the request? Raymond, Mr. Raymond, I'll give that to you.
I'm sorry. Councilman, we are doing CI because of the flexibility. It allows us to be able to, if we wanted to expand on the site, it allows us to do that without having to conform to the existing building setbacks. It's the most flexible that we can get on that site.
I'm wondering if we were asking, if a commercial company was asking to do this, not knowing that the city was going to be using this building, that we would do this for that. Would that be the case?
If we didn't know the intended use, I wouldn't recommend it, but whether it's a nonprofit like the Ed Rochelle or.
Well, no, I mean, the Ed Rochelle is not the concern here. It's us that we're asking for this because it gives us a lot more flexibility. But we would, if it wasn't us doing this, using this facility, we wouldn't offer this to someone else.
I would say we would if we knew that the intended use, whether it's the city, a private company, or a nonprofit, was going to use it for 40 years worth of office space. I would recommend it. It's not that we're asking, it's that we know the guaranteed under contractual obligation for 40 years will be office setting.
I mean, we're talking about setbacks here, right? And things that we could do it. I mean, what is the plan here in terms of what is going to be done with this facility that we would allow this to happen?
The plan is that the building will be rehab to include office space and up to 30 police officer positions would be space there as well.
No, I'm asking what would be done to the building.
The building
that
would
be
pretty much,
different than
the
just the
building-
rehabbing of it.
Well, there may be additional need for additional building footprint to accommodate the police in particular, who need to be close. They need their separate entrance because the state DPS will be using the facility as well. So there may be some additional add-ons to the building. There could be some parking lot improvements. It just gives them the most flexibility possible. Their engineer and architect is designing it right now for the city's intended use. So it just gives us that flexibility. I know that in the police side, they need a separate entrance to keep their personnel and the state troopers separate from others. There may be some storage facilities for some of the bike vehicles that the police department uses.
So we know for sure that we are going to use, we would not be able to use commercial neighborhood or neighborhood commercial based on what it is, not just based on flexibility, but based on what we're planning.
Al would have to answer that one because I'm not too familiar on that other classification.
Mr. Raymond?
I'm sorry, Councilman, ask the question again.
Okay, so we know for sure that the plans that we have in place would require commercial intensive versus neighborhood commercial, or is every plan that we have for this building within the neighborhood commercial requirements?
I'm sorry, one more time.
I think Al, I think I understand the question. I think the answer is yes, that the plans that we have, this zoning best fits those plans.
That's not
Right,
exactly what I'm
exactly.
asking. What I'm asking is if our plans fit within neighborhood commercial, or do our plans require a CI?
I would say they, to be most flexible, they would require a CI.
No, I'm not asking about flexibility. I'm asking
Yeah.
about current plans.
That's
I mean,
it. So the current plan.
The current plan
yeah.
is going to change the setbacks for this building. We're going to add on to the building to where it changes the setbacks.
Right. That's the plan right now. But that's the plan right now.
Okay. I understand what we're trying to do and what we're trying to use, but I don't think we would have done this for a commercial company. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, if I'm understanding what you're saying is that, I mean, the building is there, and it's probably up the building and the sidewalk.
Right.
You know, well, I think what you're saying is the setback is that, you know, to maximize the property, since the building is already there, you're not gonna tear the building down. You're using the existing structure.
Right.
So if you had a new structure, instead of being relatively identical to what may be used or not, if you had to meet new setbacks, you got a building sitting here that's on the sidewalk because it already exists and been existing for 50 or 75 years. If you had to meet the new setbacks and you knew one, you might have to move it back 10, 15, 20 feet depending on the setback.
Right.
And so you're losing a substantial amount of property on that one. And I think probably we would be amenable to whether it was us or somebody else if it was a vacant piece of property, that'd be one thing. But here you got an existing building that takes up a pretty substantial piece of the property. So to make everything similar, I think that would be worth the effort.
Yeah,
personally.
that's why we're recommending it. There's potential plans to expand for storage and
Right.
separate entrances, so that's.
Yeah, okay. Any other, Mr. Hernandez got that? Mr. Risley?
Yeah, just to help answer the question on why we might need it to be a CI, because some of the departments might have laboratory uses such as utilities that they want to put in there, and those are allowed in CI but not in the commercial neighborhood. Some of our departments, such as utilities, have some might have some laboratory uses that might go in that building, and those are allowed in the CI but not in the commercial neighborhood.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Just to get some clarity here, I wasn't aware that we were looking at putting utilities here. I thought we were going to
We're
be
not.
police
That's it.
officers, leasing some
Yeah.
space to DPS and Parks and Recreation. Who else was supposed to be?
But it's a 40-year term, and you might have other departments, and given that that's one of our main businesses, that's, if you're looking for why we would want it to be CI, that would be a good reason.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? And there's a motion on the floor and a second, if I'm correct?
Yes, sir. A motion by Mr. Everett, seconded by Mr. Barrera, to approve a CI without the special permit.
Okay, and that's on item number 19.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? And Mr. Crewell did submit his comments, and
Yes,
they've been
sir,
read for
which
the
I
record.
read into the record.
All right. All right, and it's got to have a three-quarter vote.
Yes, sir. 7 votes.
You want to call the roll on this, please, ma'am?
Yes, sir. So for passage of ordinance 19 on its first reading, Mayor McComb,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Barrera,
Aye.
Garza,
Aye.
Guajardo, Hernandez,
No.
Hunter. Okay, it's okay. Molina
Aye.
and Roy.
Aye.
Okay, the ordinance passes.
All right, item number 19 passes. No briefings today. We've got a executive session. Is this going to be for both of them? We got two executive
I know
sessions.
for sure the lunchtime one will be going, and we might as well announce both in case, I've been talking to Keith and he wasn't sure if we were gonna have that second one or not, but we might as well go ahead and announce both.
All right, then let me get back up here.
I kind of split it up for you, Mayor, so.
All right, let me get back over here so I make sure. All right, this is item 20 and 21, okay.
Yeah, I thought we were doing them separately.
All right, well, the council will then, we're fixing to go into executive session on items 20 and 21, per the Texas Government Code, section 551.071, and we'll return. And those items,
And 551.087, Mayor, I'm sorry, one more.
551.071 and 551.071.
0.087.
Huh?
Well, 20 is
Oh,
on.
yeah, there's
you had-
551.087.
Yes, sir, thank you.
All right. And one of them is has to do with consult with the attorneys on economic development incentive agreements on the Upper Padre Limited North Padre Water Park Holdings Development Agreement, and the other one is to discuss with attorneys the collective bargaining agreements with the city, Corpus Christi Police Officers Association and the Corpus Christi Professional Firefighters Association. We'll go into executive session and then we shall return. It's about 10 minutes after 1. I don't anticipate these taking a long time, hopefully 1:30, 1:45. let's see, Michael was online, and we got our people back there to the, okay. Excuse me?
Michael's not online yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, if, Michael's not here, so I guess somebody could sit in this seat if they wanted to.
Oh, are they?
Well, we're just gonna have one item.
We just need 5. Yeah,
Okay. All right. Have you got him?
no.
I mean, it's just adjourn.
Yeah, so
Okay.
he's not answering right now.
All right, we'll reconvene the council meeting, and I don't think on items 21 or 20. You're there, Michael? Yes, sir. Okay. We've completed the executive session, and items 20 and 21, there's no action on either one, is that correct? That's correct, Mayor. All right,
That's correct, Mayor.
all right. Then, with that being the case, anyone have any identification on future agenda items?
Yes, Mayor, I have something.
All right.
You know, considering the delays and, I'm sorry, not delays, but the issue around coronavirus, I'd like to understand where we are in our construction. If we can get our, like a report or an update from engineering as to the status of Everhart construction on Everhart Road and any other projects that we have going on, just giving an update as to see if we're on schedule, behind schedule, anything that, you know, that may have, or that we may foresee as being delayed by the current circumstances.
Okay, we can do that. We can do that with a written correspondence if that suffices.
That would be fine.
Okay, we'll get a memo by next week that gives a highlight of the status of the major capital projects.
Right, and I know we've been working on wastewater in terms of getting them up to speed with preventive maintenance. I
Okay.
think some of the clarifier issues we had on the consent agenda earlier
Right.
might have been able to address that earlier on if we had the proper preventive maintenance in place. Can we get a report on where we are with that?
The preventative maintenance, but in what terms of?
In terms of implementing the preventive maintenance program and life cycle asset management through
Okay.
Maximo.
I got you.
And
Okay,
you
we
can
do-
limit it to wastewater, but
Okay.
I mean, if that's all we've been focusing on, if not, any other departments that are doing that as well.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, anybody else have any other future agenda items? If not, we'll stand adjourned.